Hello people, welcome back here yes for the Singapore Grand Prix Hotlap and setup guide and also the explanation. Singapore really relies a lot on trail braking if you want to get a lot of time, especially in your qualifying. In the race it's pretty much okay if you're following a pack in the DRS train. You're gonna be probably lifting a bit before the braking zones, but in your quali lap you're gonna have to be very precise on your brakes. And as you might have seen earlier, not really having the best of day right now. Just woke up and still a bit sleepy from last night, so braking's not really on point just yet. Perhaps if I get a 10-15 laps more running in, and then I'll get a bit more consistent with it. But that aside, uh, the PB I've done, I think before this, using this setup, before I recorded this was 35.0. Sadly, I didn't record it at that time, and I look back and there was no recording. Anyway, let's come back to Singapore. A high downforce track, maximum downforce track position is going to be key around here, and you want to make sure you qualify as high as you can, regardless if you're a back marker or a front runner. You have to qualify as high as you can to make sure you get the best position through the race. Overtaking is pretty difficult, so here Singapore 11 wings, that's pretty much the way to go. ERS regen is going to be a bit of a nightmare here, but frankly speaking, you're not really going to need any ERS to burn off throughout a lap, unless you're going for an in lap or out lap after your pit stops. That, or probably going for a faster lap, that's all. Otherwise, if you want to expand some ERS from lap to lap, you can definitely consider running like 10-10 or 11-10 even, so one way or another. So 11-10, you're going to be having a bit more pointiness on the front or more oversteer on the rear, or if you want more stable car plus slightly better speed, 10-11 would be a good way. If you feel 11 is pretty good, you just want to reduce the overall downforce slightly faster on the straights, 10-10. But the downside is you're definitely going to have a harder time to follow people around throughout the circuit. Unless you're like significantly faster than everyone else, you can afford to run something lower like this. Alright, 10-10, 11-11, your choice. I'll stick with 11-11 throughout the qualifying and race. Transmission 155. As always, the standard, this is what I start off with. 100 on the on throttle gives you the best initial traction coming out of corners. Again, time trial, it's a bit sketchy with the grip, so you may be sliding around coming out of corners. That's quite common, but then once you jump into a Grand Prix mode or online mode, the grip just naturally becomes much better and much more natural, so you'll feel 100% is pretty much okay there. In the race, definitely you can drop it down to 90, 80, whichever you like. Do remember though, as you go lower, you will get less traction, less momentum coming out of the corners. All right, this is especially good if you're just following in a train, you just want to save your tires. You can drop it down to I usually like to drop it to 90% on throttle through the MFD. This is pretty good to save tires. And then if I'm going for out lap, or maybe if it's fresh tires and qualifying laps, definitely 100. Off throttle 55 is pretty good. It keeps the car pretty loose on the rear. If you feel the rear is a little too loose, you can definitely go up on the off throttle by 1%. So this will make the rear a bit stiffer, especially at slow corners. You may notice in slow speed corners, especially in sector 3, you may be a bit slower. Then again, if you feel you're a little too fast over there, well, that's good. You want to be fast through the circuit anyway. 55, good way to start. If you need more rotation, you can go down 54, 53, but be careful. The lower you go, the more your rear is going to be unlocked. It's going to get even more loose. So under braking, especially when you're trail braking, your rear is going to snap quite easily. The lower you go, it's easier to snap. Alright, if you feel maybe your rear is snapping under braking, either you increase your brake bias by 1, go up to 51%, or you can adjust your overall setup off throttle up to 56. I'd say keep it at 55 for the off throttle, and then in the race and qualifying, just play your brake bias. That's pretty much the best thing you can do, a best compromise and best way to manage your tires as well. Suspension geometry, again, right, left, 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 pretty standard around most tracks. Again, this is to give you, the best performance out of the car. Maximum front camber keeps the car pretty stable under braking and acceleration for the fronts. Mid corner you might lose a bit of grip, but you're going pretty slow anyway around here, so it's pretty okay. It gives you best performance under braking and under acceleration. Mid corner, you have the aero to do the work for you. Rear camber, when you put it maximum negative 2.0 like this, it's gonna give you more rotation on the rear in cornering phases. Right, so this will help your rear to rotate. If you feel maybe you want to fine tune a setup, maybe the rear is just too slidey, you can always try right, left like this. Rear camber all the way to right, or rear camber in the middle also works. But since Singapore, a very slow track, there's a lot of high speed corners as well here, and transition a lot of direction change here very quick, so you want higher rear camber so that your direction change will be very seamless. Front toe, keep it at 0.05. if you increase this, it's going to make your car sharper on initial turn in. Mid corner you will feel like, ooh, the car is like a little like wee slippery. And on exit it might compromise your exit because your front is too pointy and it just washes away. Rear toe, keep it like this gives you the best rotation in the rear. If you increase the rear toe, it's gonna make your rear a little stiff, so that means on cornering your car will be reluctant to turn, you will lose lap time. So like this, right, left is the best way to go. Suspension, again, this is where you can always find the most time from your setup after you've adjusted everything. Probably this is the first thing you want to adjust actually. Once you load the setup in, if you feel the car is oversteering a lot, you can definitely reduce the rear anti-roll bar one at a time. The preset that I normally use is 111627, right? Minimum on the front anti-roll bar and front suspension gives you the best turn in for your car, so your car is pretty agile on turning in. You want that. And rear suspension, I like to put it at 1 because, well, the curbs are pretty deadly in this game, and even in this track you have to mount a lot of the curbs. So if your rear suspension is a little too stiff, you can definitely risk bumping your car over it and losing control of your car, and, well, say hi to Seb if that happens. And rear anti-roll bar, again, it's where I like to optimize it to get the rotation I like in the car. So the higher you go, the more your car will be compliant on turning. It's so much easier to turn in. Theoretically 111 will be super smooth, buttery smooth on entry, but in mid corner and on exit it might be very slidey. On traction as well, it's going to be a little unpleasant to put down the power. So somewhere around 1.6 is always a good baseline to use. You can pretty much run this baseline at any track and you'll be pretty much guaranteed to have a good time. If you really want to optimize it, you go either one click up if you need more rear rotation, or if you need less rear rotation or stability, you go down on the anti-roll bar. Front ride height, I have tried again 1.6, 1.7, 3.7 even here, because curbs are pretty high, 3.8. I found that 3.8 feels pretty good when you take the curbs, but you lose a lot of time overall in the whole track. So you're losing about probably 2 to 3 tenths compared to my PB that I just did. So yeah, you definitely want something low so that you generate more downforce in the car. 1.6 obviously is going to generate more downforce, but you're going to be bottoming out a lot by riding the curbs around here. 2.7 is pretty good clearance. You can mount the curbs like I did in some of the corners. You have to either way to gain time. So 2 on the front, 7 on the rear. If you reduce your front ride height, this is going to make your car on the front even more pointier. So if you feel like this setup is still somehow understeery, you can definitely drop the front ride height by 1. But I do not recommend this at this track. You will come to notice that at the high speed corners, like the last 2 corners, right, when you have a little too pointy of a front end, your car is just going to wash out, you're going to spin out. So you need a bit of stability. You generate a bit of understeer by increasing the front ride height. You keep the car stable through the last 2 corners, and you can pretty much floor it like I did. Rear ride height, the higher you go, it's going to increase the rotation on the rear. Again, Singapore downforce is all the thing about here. You don't need straight line speed, not much, maybe just enough to defend on the straights. Then again, if someone is close enough, only then they'll be able to attack you. 7 on rear right height, pretty good ground clearance and pretty good rotation as well. And since there's a lot of traction zones as well, very slow traction zones, I have tried 1.16 or even lower on like 5 on the rear right height, 6 on the rear right height, it doesn't work. 7 definitely works well. It also works, but it kind of like loses time a lot in the rest of the track. 2.7 is pretty good as a baseline. Brakes 150, always like this. If you feel like into some corners when you're trail braking with this setup, especially when you have a very rear aggressive setup, the rear is tail happy, it tends to oversteer. If your setup is oversteery anyway, right, like this, it's borderline oversteery, but still stable. So if you find like your car is oversteering, under braking, you're losing the rear under brakes, maybe at the end of sector 2, when you're going through the Anderson Bridge, there's a little hairpin, right? You can probably lose your car over there. So maybe for that corner you can up it to 51%. Everywhere else you can pretty much run with 50 and you'll be okay actually. If you notice throughout the race, if your rear tires are wearing out more than the fronts, start pushing the brake bias forward to preserve the rears and also keep the car balance a little more distributed. So you push the balance forward so that the car doesn't feel too oversteery once the rears are wearing out. 50% is the way to go around here. Don't argue about that, don't ask me why. Just code these things. Tire pressures, rear maximum, this for best tire wear, tire life, and it's gonna give you a bit more tire temps, but you're gonna be running mediums or hards only in this race. Singapore, it's pretty temperature sensitive either way. Even on the hard, sometimes you can overheat those tires if you're not driving smoothly. So maximum the rear gives you best tire life and also best stability. The higher pressure gives you best stability in slow speed, medium speed, any kind of speed of corners. Same for the fronts, it's going to give you more stability if you increase the tire pressure, but remember, the higher you go on the pressures, you will have more temperature. So for Singapore, I recommend starting off at 23.0. Maybe in time trial you can even run actually full pressures. That's pretty fine in time trial. There's no tire temps in time trial, it's all fixed at 100 degrees. In the race qualifying, probably you want to lower it by 1 psi because you will be carrying a lot more speed in qualifying with soft tires. You do not want them to overheat by the time you arrive in last sector, so take it cautiously in sector 1. Start your lap with just about 85 degrees Celsius on all tires, and by the time you end your lap you're going to be in good temperature range. Anything above 105, it's overheating already, so you do not want the tires to go above 100 so that you have the best amount of grip throughout the hot lap and the race. 22.6 is also okay. If you go lower usually on tire pressures, it's going to induce more tire wear as well. So again, this is something you have to try it out yourself in your practice session and see if you need more tire wear or less tire wear on the front to balance it out. If you need more tire wear on the front to balance out the tire wear of the car, definitely go lower. It helps with tire pressure as well. If you feel like the front is wearing out too much, you want to lower the wear, you increase the tire pressure, as long as you are able to manage the tire temperatures and be smooth with your driving. If you're super smooth with your driving, even with maximum pressures, you're actually going to be okay. But yeah, nothing higher than 23.4, otherwise you'll be in overheating zone all the time. Once you overheat the tires, it's pretty hard to bring them back in range and you're going to be losing 1 to 2 seconds per lap. There you go. This setup pretty much the same thing you're going to be using for race, qualifying, and the wets. The only change I'll probably do for the wets is off throttle, drop it down to 1, drop it down by 1 to 54%. And if it's going to be a full wet race, I'll probably before park firm is locked in, I'll reduce my anti-roll bar by 1 just to make the rear a bit more stable. And you can actually increase the rear ride height by 1 to compensate for that. So it's pretty good compromise in the rain. Otherwise, keep it like this, you're pretty good to go throughout the race. 150 on the brakes, tire pressures, I'll probably keep it the same as well, because it's pretty hard to generate temperatures in the intermediates and the wet tires in Singapore, because it is already a slow circuit, but in the wet conditions it's like super slow. Your lap times are like sub 2 minutes, higher than 2 minutes if it's wet. So yeah, that's about it. So let me know how you feel with this setup. How does it go for you? Again, it is the end of this game's life cycle. F1 22 is coming out very soon, so I'm gonna finish up as many tracks as I can within my league race schedule by the end of June. So after that, we're gonna jump ships to F1 22, and hopefully we'll get some setup work done there as well. So leave a like, stay subscribed for that, and yeah, check out the other videos as well on the channel. Some hot laps are there, some cheeky little boring-ish battles. Maybe if you want to watch those are there. Some ACC streams if you're interested to watch as well. No highlights just yet. I'm kind of lazy to edit anyway, so ignore that. Everything else, whatever's on the channel, feel free to watch it. Join the Discord as well, and I'll probably see you all around if you need help with the setup. So take care everyone, stay safe, and goodbye.